All right, so good afternoon to all of you. If you are within the CET zone that I can see from the participants in the countries that you are coming from, all of you, you are in a Greek or Israeli time zone or in CET zone. So it's good afternoon to everyone. We are very happy to have all of you in one more Athena talk. And we are very happy and as well because we welcome an Athenian speaker that comes from the Athena network. He's going to discuss with us something very, I will say, not hot, but very, very current, as a challenge, legal and ethical dilemmas of autonomous driving. I think that our discussion will go beyond autonomous driving because AI contains a lot of dilemmas, regarding how to use it and how to exploit in this kind of new era. It's not technology, it's a new era, in my opinion. The today's speaker is Mr. Christian Sahrastnik. I'm sorry for my accent. It's very bad in whatever I'm going to say. He's a teaching and research assistant at the Faculty of Law in the University of Maribor, Slovenia. He's involved in many international projects, spanning from cybersecurity to communication industry. His CV is available through the Athena Talks website, through the Athena European University Events tab. And today's title is Legal and Ethical Dilemmas of Autonomous Driving. So, Christian, the floor is yours. Share the correct screen, in order to have, your presentation. And thank all of you for your participation. You have 40 minutes, and then please engage all of us in the question session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. But before I start, let me just check that you can see the full screen of my PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, great. I also think that you can hear me well, so let me begin. Thank you for the opportunity to have this topic presented on today's Athena Talks. And the legal and ethical dilemmas of autonomous driving are not such a new term, but nevertheless is still a very important topic to have. The first concept of autonomous vehicle isn't as new as we might think. Leonardo da Vinci was the first person to conceive the self-propelled cart in the 5th century. You can see the scheme of the cart and the digitally made prototype on the images. Also, you can see the first car that was prototyped by Carl Benz. It is called Benz Patent Motorwagen from the 1885. So this was the first industrial vehicle, and this was the first autonomous vehicle that is so-called that we can have from the 15th century from Leonardo da Vinci. But to fully understand the concept of autonomous vehicle, let's start with the level of automation for automated driving. We have 5 or 6, if we're counting the level 0, different automation levels from 0 to 5. At 0, there is no automation at all. And at 5, the car is fully automated and no driver is required. Most commercially available cars today are level 2 or level 3, which means that they can control steering, acceleration, and deceleration, and even change lanes with some supervision of a human. However, we expect to see in the next decade a little more cars that are level 4 and level 5. So regarding the benefits of autonomous vehicle, we should begin with the question, if there is a way that we could eliminate the 90% of the traffic accidents, would you support it? So fully autonomous vehicles have the potential to benefit our world by increasing the traffic efficiency, which results in eased road congestion, reducing pollution, which results in decreased harmful emissions, minimized unproductive and stressful driving, and beyond all, as I mentioned, eliminating up to 90% of traffic accidents. This is what driverless car technology promises to achieve. But how? By eliminating the main source of accidents, since more than 90% of the traffic accidents are caused by human error. Additionally, as I mentioned before, the autonomous vehicle cannot fall asleep at the wheel, cannot get distracted or even drive over the speed limit. Therefore, it can conclude that the self-driving cars are more reliable than their manual counterparts. But nevertheless, some accidents will, even with autonomous vehicles, be unavoidable, as technology errors can occur, poor maintenance, improper servicing, security vulnerabilities, or misaligned sensor or other things can and will occur. Or even when an animal or pedestrian will dart out in front of the moving autonomous vehicle. Algorithm can avoid dangerous situations. Nevertheless, accidents cannot be 100% prevented, especially when autonomous vehicles are driving alongside human drivers. When accidents will happen, their outcome may be determined months or even years in advance by programmers or policymakers as an algorithm. And the artificial intelligence that is actually doing the driving is merely software carrying out its programming. Even though the algorithm does not explicitly handle the dilemma situation involving the unavoidable collisions, the autonomous vehicles would nevertheless behave in some way. Whatever is this behavior consciously designed, or it simply emerges from the rules that were programmed into the car. Henceforth, every decision an autonomous vehicle makes has to be intentionally programmed and trained into it. Therefore, in case of a traffic accident, the autonomous vehicle is going to calculate something like the probability of hitting a certain group of people if you swerve one direction versus another direction where you slightly increase the risk of passenger or other drivers. However, some crashes will require autonomous vehicles to make difficult ethical decisions in cases that involve unavoidable harm. In those scenarios, autonomous vehicle will need to engage in crash optimization. Optimizing crashes means to choose the course of action that will likely lead to least amount of harm. From comparison, if we're driving an ordinary, not autonomous vehicle, whichever way we would react would be understood as a reaction and not deliberate decision. It would be instinctual, panicked move with no forethought or malice, because in a real world, accident of a human driver usually has neither the time nor neither information needed to make the most ethical or least harmful decision. But if program were to instruct the algorithm in the car to make the same move, given the conditions, it makes sense in the future. Well, that looks like a little more like premeditated decision, or even we can call it premeditated homicide. But here are the important questions. What would you do in a situation like this? How can a person decide between two really bad options? And from this, we have a quick question. What should the autonomous vehicle in case of a traffic accident do? And who should decide that? Okay. And to get the answer of aforementioned dilemmas, let's begin with a well-known philosophic question approach of a trolley problem. You've probably heard of it, and the trolley dilemma is an experiment commonly used in research on moral judgment and decision-making, in which a runaway trolley is heading toward a group of 5 people. And the only way to save these 5 people is to pull a lever. We have a person that can pull a lever and divert the trolley onto a different track and killing single person instead of killing the 5 persons. You can answer to yourself how would you do in this situation, how would you react? most people say that they would pull the lever and divert the trolley onto a different track and saving more people lives in this scenario. Similar approach is presented also in the footbridge dilemma, where the subject find themselves on the bridge over the tracks with a stranger, as we can see it in the picture, and pushing off the stranger off the bridge in front of the coming train would certainly stop this train or trolley and save 5 people in the track. Interestingly enough, most people say that they would pull the lever in the original trolley dilemma. However, only a minority also say they would push the stranger off the bridge in the footbridge dilemma. Why? Why is this the case? Because in this case, more action is required of a pushing person off the bridge to the rails, and this presents a tougher ethical decision, as we are sacrificing a neutral bystander on the bridge to save other people's lives. And to the similar extent as the trolley and footbridge dilemma, we will show you ethical dilemmas where autonomous vehicle must choose the lesser of 2 evils. An outside observer you judge will outcome which scenario, which decision is more acceptable. And these hypothetical scenarios will also include a human perspective on moral decision, which should be made by autonomous vehicle. But how about believability of these hypothetical scenarios? We may, for example, not think about the problem of ethical dilemmas in case of a traffic accident of autonomous vehicles at all. We may say that these scenarios are a little bit unrealistic, incredibly unlikely, or just silly. However, but this criticism misses the point because it takes the scenario a little bit too literally. It is true that these scenarios appear unlikely, but even a low probability events are bound to occur when we will have thousands or millions of autonomous vehicles on the road. Moreover, even if this situation were never to happen, never to arise, autonomous vehicle programming must still include decision rules about what to do in such a hypothetical situations. So let's assume that in the next hypothetical scenario, some failure, for example, brake failure will occur of autonomous vehicle, and given the velocity of the vehicle, either victim would surely be killed on impact. So we are here raising question, what would be the ethically correct decision? And if you were programming the self-driving car, how would you instruct it to behave if you ever encounter such a case, as rare as it may be? As you will see, there is no clear or right answer to these questions. We all have different opinions, and we may think that traffic accidents should happen naturally, rather than letting the algorithm or robot decide who will live or who will die. And all this following the scenario was created with using the website of Moral Machine. You can visit this website, and there we will find more ethical dilemmas and scenarios about traffic accidents where the autonomous vehicle is involved. And let's start with our first scenario. Try to answer to yourself, how would you instruct the autonomous vehicle to behave in this particular situation? There we have only 2 options available. And in the left, we can see if the autonomous vehicle would continue its course would hit this person, which would die. In the other scenario, we have the autonomous vehicle swerving and killing person who is also crosswalking the road. Both pedestrians will be killed on impact. Probably in this case, you would scenario option on the left. Why? Because in this scenario, we are inactive. We do not have an action or decision to make. the car is continue driving its course and let the accident happen somewhat naturally. But if we are looking in the next scenario, we have a situation which is similar to the trolley and footbridge dilemma. So if we do not do anything, the autonomous vehicle will continue driving and kill 5 persons. In the other picture, we can see if the autonomous vehicles will swear, we would prevent death of 5 people. However, another pedestrian will be sacrificed. In this case, we are raising question: would we prioritize inactiveness or saving more lives? And we can explore these disturbing ethical dilemmas through the Bentham's and Kant's philosophies. And according to Bentham's view, the car should follow the so-called utilitarian ethics. It should take action if that action will minimize total harm. Even if that action will kill a bystander or a passenger, the utilitarian choice is to sacrifice 1 person in order to save more lives. Kant's philosophy is a little bit different. It's called deontologism and is confirming to his view that you should not take an action that explicitly harm a human being. So in this case, you should let car to take its course, even though if that is going to harm more people. So inactiveness or utilitarianism, in which we are trying to save more life. Therefore, deontologism focuses on the right of individuals, often putting this ahead over the utilitarian consideration. And from this perspective, the act of killing a person would be considered morally wrong, even if it means saving 5, for example, 5, like in previous case, more lives. In this case, is the choice not to interfere in this situation. And for decades, philosophers have debated which philosophy should prevail, utilitarianism, and which philosophy is better for society. For example, utilitarianism, where we could save more lives, or solution, deontologism, that values individual rights more, such as the right not to be intentionally put into the harm's way. And here we are raising a question: if consideration of fairness, for example, criteria of breaching the law, needs to be addressed as well. For example, if one person is legally crossing the road and another is illegally crossing the road through the red light, what should we do? The person, as you can see on the left, is unlawfully crossing, while the person on the right has stepped onto the road where is the green light. And if you choose which option to take, left or right, I believe that most of you would opt the scenario in the left, because we have a utilitarian inactiveness, individual rights, deontologism, and also we have the criteria of breaching the law. However, in this case, we have the person in the left that is rightfully crossing the road, while the person to the right is walking through the red light. And here comes the question: should we prioritize inactiveness, so that the car should continue its course, or consideration of fairness? This is criteria of breaching the law. And which criteria should prevail? Criteria of breaching the law or consideration of fairness, as mentioned, is not a perfect criteria. For example, let's look at a situation where you're driving in a highway and there are motorcycles on both sides of your autonomous vehicle. Suddenly, a large heavy object falls off the truck in front of you. Your car cannot stop in time to avoid the collision, so it needs to make a decision. First decision is to go straight and hit the object. Therefore, the car would minimize the danger to others by not swerving, and even if that means hitting a large object and sacrificing the driver's life. The next option is swerve left on the motorcyclist with a helmet. Therefore, the car would prioritize safety by hitting the motorcycle. And the last option is swerve right on the motorcyclist without a helmet. And if you say the biker with the helmet because it's more likely to survive, in this case, we are penalizing the responsible motorcyclist. If instead we are saying that we should save the biker without a helmet because he's acting irresponsibly, then we are going beyond. Then we are going beyond the initial design of minimizing the harm. It probably doesn't much matter of the safety of the car itself if it hits motorcyclist with a helmet or without. But it is matter a lot of the motorcyclist whether he or she is wearing a helmet. The one with helmet would, in this case, probably not survive such a collision. Therefore, in this dreadful scenario, it seems reasonable to program a good algorithm to swerve in the motorcyclist with a helmet. But if this is our decision, how well is justice and public policy served by this crash optimization design? Motorcyclists who wear helmets are essentially being penalized and discriminated against for their responsible decision to wear a helmet. And this may encourage some motorcyclists motorcyclists which do not wear helmets in order to avoid targeting by autonomous vehicles. So some may want to argue that motorcyclists without helmet ought to be targeted, for instance, because he is acted recklessly and therefore is more deserving of a harm. So this is criteria of breaching the law or consideration of fairness. And even if the correct design, notice that we are again moving beyond harm in making crash optimization decisions. And which criteria should prevail? And until now, we have mentioned the activeness. So are we making an action or inaction, and breaching the law? But what about the numbers of saved lives or value of life? Let's begin with scenario where we have to choose between life of a human and life of an animal. How should autonomous vehicle behave in this scenario? What about next scenario? We have one human and two animals. Should we sacrifice a human life to save more lives? And these are lives of the animals. Or we are still sacrificing animals, even if that means that we are sacrificing two lives, and instead saving a human life. So in next scenario, we have one human versus 5 animals. And obviously, as we can see in the picture, these are pretty smart animals since they are crossing on the road on a crosswalk. And also they are lawfully crossing roads as there are green light. But how should crash optimization design be in this case? Should we swerve to the other lane and kill the animals? Or should we continue driving ahead and indeed towards the elderly man and kill that man? How about when we have a scenario when we have an injury of a person and life of an animal? How about this case? Or should in all cases prevail human life over the lives of an animal? So one important thing, but often overlooked in ethical issue is raised by the autonomous vehicle, is whether they should be programmed to avoid hitting animals. And if so, which ones? All vertebrates and also some invertebrates are sentient beings, and if they are hit, they are liable to suffer. There's also a question about safety of a driver when hitting larger animals such as deer or cow. And how about pets, as they have special places in our hearts and should be avoided if possible, such as pet dogs or cats? Should autonomous vehicle take this into the account and differentiate between different species, or where would we have a system favoring pets over game or birds? And value of life model-based on species would allow us to differentiate between common pets or other animals, and would give us the tool to deal with situation in which the death of animal could be avoided by taking a minor risk of harm to human, like in the last scenario. It is worth mentioning that Germany was the first country to adopt ethical rules regarding self-driving cars. The proposed rules states that that self-driving cars should always attempt to minimize human death and should always give priority to humans over animals or property. If we look more precisely at rule number 7 of ethical rules of automated and connected vehicle traffic, this is the rule of the document Automated and Connected Driving by Ethics Commissions appointed by Federal Minister of Transport and Digital Infrastructure of Germany. And this rule states, in hazardous situations that prove to be unavoidable, despite all technology precautions being taken, the protection of human life adjusts top priority in a balancing of a legally protected interest. Thus, within the constraints of what technology feasible, the system, this is important, the system must be programmed to accept damage to animals or property in a conflict if this means the personal injury can be prevented. So therefore, the life of an animal should be sacrificed to prevent a personal injury of humans or life of a human. Criteria of life regarding humans is a little bit different and states that we could save the youngest person, and with this we would save more number of saved years. An account of value of life model is therefore not focused on the number of saved lives, but rather on number of saved life years. For example, hypothetical scenario where autonomous vehicle must either swerve left or to strike an 80-year-old boy, or swerve right to strike a 80-year-old grandfather. Here we have this scenario. Should striking the grandfather be lesser evil? Maybe, at least to some eyes. However, the thing is that the boy has still the entire life in front of him. First love, first family of our own, a career, and other adventurous and happinesses. While on the other side, we have a grandfather who had already life full of happiness and experiences. And we might agree that the grandfather has equal right to life and is as valuable as a little boy's. But nevertheless, there are reasons to seem to wait in favor of saving the little boy's life over the grandfather's, even accident is unavoidable. And if you selected to save the boy in a previous scenario, what would you do in this one? Here we have collision of a different criteria, such as value of life. We are saving more life years, we're saving the boy. We have criteria of breaching the law or consideration of fairness, and also we have activeness or inactiveness in this scenario. However, what is the problem of value of life of concept? We should treat fairly all persons and not engage in acts and discrimination based on race, religion, gender, disability, age, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Therefore, to treat individuals differently on the basis of their age, when the age is not a relevant factor, seems to be exactly this kind of discrimination. And anyway, a reason to discriminate does not necessarily justify this discrimination, since more reasons may be illegitimate. Even if we point out the disparity of life experiences between old and young, the difference is automatically an appropriate bias for different, isn't automatically appropriate bias for different treatment of persons. Some may even argue that discriminating on the basis of age in our crash scenario would seem to be the same evil as discriminating on the basis of the race, religion, gender, disability, national origin, and so on, even if we can invent reasons to prefer one such a group over another. Irrespective of the exact outcome of such assessments, system discriminating based on age, gender, and other factors may be considered unacceptable by the public, as well as policymakers. And beside that, there are also two additional major problems with this approach. The first is that the different cultures and regional groups may have very different views on value of life models. The second, which is also a little bit more disturbing, is that the sum of ethical choices might reveal to us that we are incredibly selfish and discriminating, or even racist. And applying such a value of life system to autonomous vehicles would result in transferring our most biases onto machines. And ethics aren't consistent also around the world. In different cultures, people have different biases towards saving one type of person in a car accident or another. So should we apply different ethics in different cultures because we have different ethics in these cases? Or should we use one ethical code worldwide? After all, these results of different studies show that we are significantly biased on physical traits depends on our geographic location. The solution may be to train algorithm to save the most lives possible, or to make a decision that causes the least impact, regardless of any physical characteristic. We are again at the document automated and connected driving, and we have a rule number 9, ethical rules of automated and connected vehicle traffic. In the event of unavoidable accident situations, any distinction based on personal features such as age, gender, physical, and mental constitution is strictly prohibited. It is also prohibited to offset victims against one another, and general programming to reduce the number of personal injuries may be justifiable. These parties involved in generational mobility risk must not be sacrificed, non-involved parties. So this rule basically says that we should not discriminate based on physical traits. Okay, to this point, we discussed ethical dilemmas from scenarios where we have two pedestrians or pedestrian or animal. From now on, we are speculating how should car autonomous vehicle react when we have a pedestrian and a passenger or a driver of a car. And many of you, I guess, would not like to be passenger in a vehicle if its algorithm would prioritize other lives higher than yours, correct? And the owner of autonomous vehicle may reasonably or not expect that its property, such as autonomous vehicle, also aligns to the owner, and that should value life of the owner more than life of anonymous pedestrians or other drivers. And one study also showed that the less that people feel less in control in autonomous vehicle, and thus they feel less responsible for the consequences of the autonomous vehicle decision to harm pedestrian. However, if autonomous vehicle will always correct the driver or passenger over the pedestrians, would we still cross the road if the autonomous vehicle has the right to sentence us to death? So we have basically the similar scenario as we had before, only in this case we have drivers and the life of drivers that if should prevail over the life of pedestrians. In the next case, we also have the same dilemma, but is a little bit more difficult. Such we have two pedestrians crossing the road lawfully, and we have a driver moving towards them. And how should the car react in this case? Should it swerve and sacrifice drivers, or should continue its course? This is even more harder because we also harder dilemma if we still on the view that we should save the drivers. We have here also consideration of fairness. We have active action, and also this should prevail to save the life of the pedestrian, or are you still in a view that should the lives of drivers prevail in these cases? In the last one, we also have when they're crossing there illegally. So if this, you see this a reason that should autonomous vehicle swerve in this scenario or not. So in this chapter, when we have collision with other vehicles, we will address the choice between two vehicles and how the car should be programmed. If it should be programmed to strike a lighter vehicle, such as Mini Cooper or motorcycle, or should it strike a heavier one, which is also more safer, such as SUVs. It's generally uncontroversial that if we can easily avoid harm to ourselves, then we should do it. So if the autonomous vehicle were most interested in protecting its occupants, then it would make sense to choose collision with lighter object possible. However, on the other hand, if we have car when charged with protecting other drivers and pedestrians over its own occupants, it's not an unreasonable imperative that if should be programmed to prefer a collision with a heavier vehicle instead of a lighter one. It seems to make sense to collide with a safer and heavier vehicle, such as, for example, Volvo SUV that has a reputation for safety, over the car that is known for car safety, for example, small cars such as Mark. And this strategy may be more legally and also ethically better than the previous one of jealousy protecting the car own occupants. It could also minimize lawsuits because of an injury or others, of injury to others would be less severe. Furthermore, because drivers is one who introduced risk to the society, risk of traffic accidents of autonomous vehicles, the driver should perhaps be legally obliged, or at least morally obliged, to absorb the burden of any harm, at least when they're squared off against pedestrian, bicycle, or bystanders. And crash optimization algorithms involve the deliberate and systematic discrimination of certain type of object to crash into. For example, larger vehicles. And for these reasons, even sales of these safer, larger vehicles could lower. In the next scenario, if we also standing the point that the life of the driver should be prioritized over the pedestrians, we are asking how to react into this situation where we have one driver and two pedestrians. So even utilitaristic approach would say us that we should save more people. However, we also have different criteria which you could apply in these scenarios. And if you are still on the view we have here on elderly driver, if life of driver should also prevail in this case over the five lives of pedestrians who are legally crossing the road in this case. And in this case, we have also another criteria added to this scenario and also swerving on the other lane, which results in action or inaction, activeness. Now, right? Such a deontologism that we could not take any action to anyone's harm. But we could also have cases where there be uncertain outcome. Algorithms, autonomous vehicles could also deal with uncertain outcomes. They would not be able to precisely determine the outcome of the accident. These are also very difficult questions. How should we react if we have 1 life and 5 injuries on the other scenario? Or even harder, when we have a case when we have a life and 5 uncertain outcomes. How should the autonomous vehicle react in this situation? These are even more harder ethical choices to be made. In this case, I asked the ChatGPT how would react. I gave the ChatGPT 2 options: for continue driving on the road and fatally hit 5 pedestrians, or swerving opposite lane and fatally injure the passenger. So we have a passenger and we have 5 pedestrians, and the similar case to the trolley dilemma. ChatGPT answered that in this case we should swerve into the opposite lane and fatally injure 1 person, and reasoning was utilitarian perspective, mostly utilitarian perspective. However, if I ask another question, ChatGPT, if we continue driving on the road and fatally injuring the passenger, or swerving into the opposite lane and fatally hitting 1 pedestrian. So we are staying on the lane and injuring the driver or passenger, or we are swerving on the other lane. In this case, chat answer the swerving into the opposite lane and fatally hitting 1 pedestrian. So in this case, the ChatGPT reasoning was to put passenger in vehicle, they are prioritized over the pedestrians because the car should show some alliance to its owner. So the next question I asked is, we have 1 passenger and 2 pedestrians. And in this case, the chat also used the utilitarian approach where we should continue driving on the road and fatally injuring the passenger. So just to see how the artificial intelligence would react in these cases. So let's now get to the ethics settings, which should be presented in other solutions. So why not let user select the car settings, and these car settings would present that the one customer may set the car to value his life over the lives of others. Another may prefer the car value, so the lives the same and minimizes the harm. Yet another want to minimize the legal liability and cost for herself. Or more troubling, these ethics settings would humans allow to save children over elderly, men over women, rich people over poor, Slovenian citizen or over non-Slovenian citizens, or one religion over another. And some of these choices seems offensive and inappropriate. But for many of us, it is also offensive and inappropriate to assume that our own life, matters more than life of others, especially if the life of the passenger we value more than the lives of 5 pedestrians. So an ethics settings is not such a good solution or quick workaround to the typical ethic dilemmas presented by autonomous vehicle. So what should we do? In this case, could be the case that the random decision is still better than predetermined one, even though it's designed to minimize harm. We could arbitrarily and unpredictably choose a path without any prejudice to either person. But this seems ethically troubling, that in that we are choosing between lives without any deliberation at all, to leave it all to the chance, where there are potentially some reasons to prefer one solution, one decision over other. As distasteful or uncomfortable those reasons may be. And market for utilitaristic autonomous vehicles, if we had to choose between a car that would always save as many lives as possible in an accident, or the one that would save drivers or passengers' car, which car would you buy? And which car would you like others to buy? So it seems that people would like to buy autonomous vehicles that protect them at all costs, but they want everybody else to buy the cars that would minimize the harm. And even though there's such a situation that we are in hypothetical scenarios are exceedingly rare, their emotional influence is likely to give broad public exposure and disproportionate weight in individual and public decision about autonomous vehicles. So, who should in the end have decision or give license to kill? Should this be the consumer? Should it be manufacturer of the program of the autonomous vehicle, or the policymakers such as government, which may regulate this kind of programming and can offer and consumers can select? Regulation may provide a solution to a problem of ethical dilemma, but regulators will be faced with two difficulties. First, most people seem to disapprove a regulation that would enforce utilitarian autonomous vehicle. And second, which is a more serious problem, such a regulation could substantially delay the adoption of autonomous vehicles, which means that the lives saved by making autonomous vehicle utilitarian may be outnumbered by the deaths caused by delaying the adoption of autonomous vehicles altogether. So in the end, it's a little bit paradoxical that the regulation of utilitarian algorithm may increase casualties by postponing the adoption of a safer technology, because people would not purchase such autonomous vehicles. And here we are at conclusion. So when the technology goes wrong, and of course it can happen, thinking in advance about ethical design and policies can help guide us responsibility into the unknown, where the new harms should be anticipated and avoided if possible. Algorithms that design and calculate the expected cost of various possible options, selecting one with the lowest cost that potentially determine who gets to live and who gets to die. And this is a problem that demands much more care and transparency in reasoning that seems it currently offered. Industry may do well set expectation not only with users, but also with broader society, educating them that they could also become victims if autonomous vehicle is not operating, and that perhaps that is justified by the greater public or overall good. Ultimately, moral decision making system should be considered a necessity for self-driving cars, even from a public point of view. And fully autonomous vehicles may be soon to hit the market, but as we can see, we are not ready yet to accept all those ethical challenges that come along with autonomous vehicles. And in the end, we can also ask us again, what is the behavior leading the best global outcome? This is all from my side. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Christian. There is, we have 5 minutes for any questions or discussions. Please stop sharing your screen.
Yes.
In order to start the process. Do we have any question, or do you want me to start, the discussion? Are there any questions from the audience? So I will start with a comment and a question continuously, Christian, on the last thing that you have mentioned. You mentioned about the best global outcome. I think the European Commission, through the publication of the Artificial Intelligence Act, is working towards this. And I a little bit, I would like to debate you why the individuals, they should make the selection and not the EU regulations or the global regulations. So if I would like to buy an autonomous car, that I think it will be the future due to the high car accidents that happens right now, I think that the EU regulations, they will make the decision, not me, because in this case, we will kill all of us. Because everyone will set up, priority to himself or to herself. So we will kill each one of us. I mean, in any kind of situation. So I will say that Artificial Intelligence Act and the EU regulations towards, addressing this kind of, dilemma, who is deciding and what are the rules. This is a comment. I would like to ask you, I was looking the statistics from EU, all right? So we have right now in Europe, for the 2021, that they have released the official statistics regarding the car accidents, death car accidents. It's something like 44 per million inhabitants in Europe right now. So how many times, possibilities? If I will have an autonomous car, what are the possibilities to meet at the same time a car, two people, that one is crossing the red light and one is crossing the green light, or if, I will have the dilemma, an animal or a human. I mean, is this, percentage, this probability higher than the human errors regarding the causing of accidents? And this is at the average. In Greece, every year, we are missing a small village due to the car accidents. So why we place this dilemma? And, I would like your input if you have, a personal opinion. And then my second comment on this is like, right now, all the autonomous car, they are using this technology which is called vision language action technology. So they are trained through images, through languages, and they take decisions. So they can see, it's like the military, we have seen this in the industry, in the military industry, that, they select an image and they follow the image. They are not, how can I say, diverted from any, let's say, electronic warfare. This is like the past. They follow an image and they target the image. So what is your opinion? I mean, for me, technology has solved. Even in my case, I have a new Toyota Corolla and it has a radar. If I will arrange a radar, even if I'm sleeping, the car will stop by itself. So if, a human is there, my car will stop by itself. It's not autonomous. So I think that this dilemma is like, do they work based on the reality or because of technophobia?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, but what is your opinion?
No, I mostly agree with everything that you said, but yeah, it will be interesting to see how that we collectively, as a nation, we will accept the behavior of autonomous vehicle in the future.
So I think, Christian, I think that the most critical issue here regarding this dilemma is like how to train ourselves and our kids to trust, technology. Because I think even with the ChatGPT, we had discussion last week, whatever other AI technologies in higher education, the main issue is like the technophobia. We don't trust technology, even though that we work for technology, the majority of us, we don't trust it. We don't trust our lives on this technology. And this is like a little bit, this is strange, very strange. We develop technology in order to improve our life and we don't trust technology.
Yeah, that's basically because we see technology as a tool to help us, not to substitute us in decision making, most likely.
Okay, so are there and I mean, before the others, they will. I mean, since the time is passing, how do you train your students in University of Maribor in order to trust technology? By engaging them?
Yeah. We try that, yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
question? Any other comment regarding this dilemma that exists? And many of them, they have been addressed by Artificial Intelligence Act, which is the official document from the European Union. Any other?
Yeah,
Yes, Willie, please.
what I want to mention it, I didn't think before I listened to you deeper about this impact, what it could have about autonomous learning. Now I know how many decisions you have to make, and it's very important. And AI is one point, but as we talked already last week, it is also the human being must be beyond HI, and then you can use it in the best way. And it make me more conscious than ever than earlier when I think about autonomous driving. Thank you.
Willie, also, in order to make a comment, and we should close here because we have passed 3 minutes the time. In autonomous driving, they have, the term the safety driver. So they provide, a last minute access to the human factor in order to intervene.
Yeah.
But we need to find the balance.
The balance.
Because if we lower these rates from 44 per million in Europe right now to, let's say, 10 using the autonomous driving, any dilemma for me is dilemma. It's a pity, but if you lower the figures and the numbers, it's towards the right direction.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so Christian, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very insightful. I think that you place us dilemma.
Yeah.
Also, we should think about to overcome this technophobia. And
The main point was to provoke about thinking
yeah,
about.
it was from another point of view, and we really appreciate within the Athena. Next week we have a speaker a professor from Turkey, that he is going to speak about organic electronics and organic displays. So until next time, stay safe, and thank you very much for your participation, and Christian for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.